Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the shadowy back passages of a royal palace where the walls really do have ears, the candles flicker for no reason, and the truth is often the first thing to get mopped up with a rag and burned in a kitchen hearth. You're a servant bone tired, underpaid, definitely understand on this night. Your job is supposed to end with chamber pots and linen folding. Instead, you're about to trip over something that was never meant to be found out. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you're listening from, and what time it is over there. I love seeing that dot now. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge along the corridor, behind the great hall where the flagstones always seem wet, even in drought. The castle above you groans with evening wait, nobles dining, stewards pacing, someone smashing a goblet in protest over the venison. Down here, it's just the usual smells: mutton fat, damp wool, and that unique odor that comes from centuries of disappointed ghosts. You're not supposed to pause here. The corridor is strictly for passage, not loitering, but your right boot's heel is half detached again and catching on every crack. You lean against a wall sconce to adjust it, and that's when you notice the draft. There shouldn't be a draft. This palace was built by obsessive masons with an irrational hatred of airflow. Yet there it is, faint, cool, and coming from behind the wood paneling. You squint, and you see it. A tiny slit in the panelwork, no wider than a comb, but definitely a seam. You glance round. No one's watching, and so, like the idiot in every folktale who lifts the forbidden lid, you push. The panel swings silently inward. Beyond is a crawl space, pitch black except for a faint amber glow deeper in. You shouldn't, you really shouldn't, you do. The air inside smells like beeswax and something else, old perfume maybe. You creep forward on hands and knees, velveted in dust. At the end, there's a lattice panel. Through it, you glimpse the edge of a chamber, luxurious, gold-leafed, suspiciously silent, and then you hear it, two voices, one high and clear, the other a voice you recognize. It shouldn't be here. You hold your breath. My lady, if anyone ever found out, says the second voice. Male, nervous, if anyone found out, says the first voice, icy as mountain snow. I would simply have them dismembered. Starting with the tongue, you press your ear closer. The two are standing close, too close. You hear the rustle of fabric, a kiss, not the polite kind dot, and then of course you sneeze. It's a pathetic little thing, but in the dead silence that follows, it might as well be a cannon blast. Footsteps, moving fast. The lattice panel swings open, and suddenly you're yanked forward by the collar. A face you know, the Queen's handmaid, pale with fury. What, in the name of St. Marjorie's toenail, are you doing here? She hisses. You try to explain. Shoe, draft, panel, sneeze. The words tumble like dropped buttons. A hand clamps your mouth. Say nothing. To anyone. Not even your mother's gravestone. You. N.O.D. You're released. Hurried out a side door. Back into the kitchen halls. Like a moldy sack tossed out with the onion peels. But you've seen something, or at least heard it. Something intimate, illicit, and extremely punishable. Now, everything feels wrong. The halls seem darker. Every noble glance lingers, half a second too long. Someone's moved your bucket. You scrub chamber pots the next morning with trembling hands. You keep your head low. But servants notice things, even when they pretend not to. Was that your footprint in the Queen's powder room? One whispers. No one's seen Lord Halberd since last night, says another. Someone's gone and stolen the kitchen's nutmeg. Again. Okay, maybe not the nutmeg part, but you get the idea. That's when the history bit sneaks in because, believe it or not, royal palaces in the 15th century were literal hives of hidden corridors and peepholes. The Chateau de Vincennes in France had entire servant tunnels that allowed staff to scurry invisibly. And in England, the walls of Hampton Court hid passageways wide enough for entire conspiracies. It wasn't just for stealth, it was for control. Keep the king's image spotless. Make sure no commoner sees a royal picking spinach from their teeth. And if someone did see something, well, palace justice was rarely written down. Historians still argue whether certain servants really acted as secret agents for foreign courts, or if those tales are just the overripe cheese of later gossip. But every once in a while, one of those stories turns out to be very real. Which brings us back to you. You're just a humble scullery drone. But now you know that the Queen herself is hiding something that involves a man who isn't the king, and a secret chamber that doesn't exist on any map. So, what do? You could ignore it. Keep your head down. Get promoted to laundry detail and die of soap inhalation at age 36. Or, you could start asking quiet questions. See who else knows. Maybe, just maybe, you're not the only one who's noticed that the Queen's jewels sometimes go missing. 4 days. Where that Lord Halberd always leaves the royal chapel through the garden gate instead of the front. But you'll have to be clever. Because if word gets out that you saw something you shouldn't have, well, they still haven't found the last servant who tripped over a secret. You're quieter now, slower. You carry your mop like a weapon. Your eyes scan the floor for more than just filth. Now you're looking for footprints, scuff marks, dropped handkerchiefs. And there are whispers, all right, always whispers. They slither down from the upper chambers like steam, curling under doorways, clinging to the stone. You pass the stewards arguing over wine inventories and overhear the name Halberd. Not his title, just his name, too familiar. That alone could mean something. You're scrubbing a stairwell landing when you catch the stable boy whistling a tune that no one outside the Queen's gallery is supposed to know. He flushes when you pause to listen. You don't say a word, but he never whistles it again. Then there's the tapestries. Gorgeous things, blue and gold and burgundy, depicting noble hunts and half-forgotten battles. But now you look at them differently. You notice the way the fabric sways slightly near heat vents where there shouldn't be wind. You catch flickers of movement behind them. Not ghosts, worse, humans. You lean against one during a break, pretending to rest. Your hand brushes a tiny slit in the weave, just large enough for an eye. And you realize someone has been watching you. The palace is a breathing beast now. Every corridor pulses with secrets. The Queen's ladies-in-waiting are no longer interchangeable gigglers, they're soldiers. Every one of them sharp as a carving knife, eyes that seem to weigh your soul and find it wanting. One morning, your breakfast bread has a bite already missing. You don't eat it, and all the while, that secret, the secret grows fatter in your chest like a hidden boil. You could go to the chief steward, but he's a creature of the Queen's household. You've seen him laugh to heart at her jokes. Pretend not to see Lord Halberd disappear into the wrong tower. No. You need something safer, something older. The palace chapel is mostly empty by mid-afternoon, except for one old washerwoman who prays for dead relatives, half of whom she probably invented. You slide in beside her, whisper just one word, tapestries. She nods, doesn't look at you. That night, under the flicker of guttering tallow, she brings you something wrapped in a rag. A pair of gloves, worn leather, pale silk lining, and on the palm a burn mark, a half ring. The Queen's seal, she murmurs, voice like cloth tearing, pressed into his hand, like a brand. His, you whisper, Halberd's. After the last quarrel, he screamed like a gut-struck boar. Why she has the gloves, she won't say. Where she got them, she won't say. But she warns you, don't tell the mirror. That's not just poetry. Every noble chamber in the palace holds at least one grand mirror, polished glass imported from Venice, worth more than your entire bloodstream. But more than a few servants swear that the Queen's mirror listens, that it remembers. Some say she speaks to it at night. Others claim they've seen figures inside that weren't reflections at all. You laugh, quietly. But then, you remember something. The Queen hasn't been seen outside her wing in 3 days. Meanwhile, the King, he's out hunting. That's what makes this dangerous. The King doesn't suspect. You're not even sure he knows. That's not just gossip, it's architectural. His rooms are in the West Wing, hers in the East. The two haven't dined together in months. And you're still a servant, still sweeping ash and lighting candles. But now you're a danger, because you're beginning to fit the puzzle pieces together. There's a pattern to Halberd's comings and goings. He always brings a leather pouch, no seal, no crest. He always leaves with a different one. Documents, poison, jam? Hard to say. You try following him one evening, just casually, no mop in hand. But you've tied a rag around your wrist to look busy. He heads up the greenstone stairs near the Queen's library, which leads to nothing. That's a dead end. Or it used to be. He vanishes, not a sound, not a creak, just gone. You touch the wall, and there it is again. A seam, a narrow door, so perfectly matched to the stone it disappears when shut. You press nothing. No give. Maybe it opens only from the inside, or maybe it needs something else. And here's your quirky historical tidbit for the night. Medieval architects loved hiding doors inside muraled walls. In Florence, one 14th century palace contained a hidden chamber within a painted mural one, lit by candlelight, the painted eyes of a saint aligned with a peephole. It wasn't art. It was surveillance. So maybe that's what the Queen's architects did too. Built a palace full of smiling saints and pious lions, all watching, all listening. It's possible. Historians admit that some nobles deliberately Engineer these observation corridors not for safety, but for blackmail, you know. Just good old-fashioned dynastic leverage. You lean in close to the seam. You smell rose oil, expensive, the kind the queen wears, and then something hisses, sharp, a whisper, but not quite human. You bolt back in the kitchen halls. Everything's too bright, too noisy. The clatter of spoons, the slap of dough, the hiss of cook's temper. Normal things, safe things, but your ears are still ringing. Because you're not the only one who's piecing things together. Others have noticed too. Not just servants, but stewards, scribes. Even a couple of the younger noblemen who like to slum in among the staff for gossip. And here's the dangerous part. Some of them don't want the truth to stay buried. Not because they're noble, but because secrets, once uncovered, can be sold. You receive a note that night, folded under your pillow. No seal, no name. It reads, "You saw the queen, so did I meet me under the west arch at dawn. Wear gloves, you." Read it twice, then again. Because now you're not just caught in a royal secret. You're being recruited. You don't sleep that night. You lie stiff as a corpse under your lumpy blanket, staring at the wood beams above you, watching moonlight crawl over the walls. The note sits beside you like a second heartbeat. You touch it once, fold it tighter. Try to forget the words. Wear gloves. What kind of message ends like that? The west arch is quiet come dawn, soaked in fog, the kind that makes everything feel ghosted. You shuffle out wrapped in your thinnest overcoat, one you stole off a nail in the scullery and prayed no one would miss. Gloves on, fingers cold, and there, right on time, stands a boy no older than 17. He's wearing a noble's undershirt and boots to sizes too big. You recognize him vaguely. He sometimes plays lute for the queen's suppers. Not very well, but he's got honest eyes, and no one with honest eyes survives long in this place. "You got the note," he says. His voice cracks. You nod. "You too?" He holds up a folded handkerchief. Inside, pressed like a death blossom, is a smudge of wax, red, with half a seal. He doesn't need to say it. It matches the burn you saw on the glove. You trade stories. Quietly, eyes darting every time a pigeon flaps. You tell him what you heard through the lattice. He tells you what he saw through the mirror. Yes, through it. "I was polishing the glass," he whispers, "when it shimmered, like heat, and I saw her, the queen, but there were two of her. One moved, the other watched." He looks up, pale. "She winked at me. The second one." That's when your stomach turns. Because this isn't just about adultery anymore. This is about sorcery. Mirrors have always been suspect in royal courts, even in real history. Did you know Catherine de' Medici was rumored to own a mirror that showed enemies' deaths before they happened? Total nonsense, probably, but fear sticks. And in your palace, well, the queen has been seen speaking to her mirror in Latin. It's not a sin, it's not a crime, but it's strange. And strange is dangerous. Your new friend, he calls himself Bren, wants to expose it. Not out of justice, but because he's scared. He thinks the queen is trying to trap something inside the glass. Or let something out. You both agree. Whatever's happening, the king can't know. Not yet. Not directly. But you need proof. That means going back. Into the queen's wing. Into the mirror room. And just like that, the real plan begins. You and Bren map out your route with leftover pastry flour and an old scrap of embroidery. You practice how to walk silently in your too loud boots. You learn which guard snores through his shifts, or Thomas, noble idiot, and which maid can be bribed with pears. And then, one evening, you slip in. The queen's wing is silent, frighteningly so. The torches burn lower here. The walls are darker. Wood, polished so smooth your reflection follows you like a pet. You reach the mirror room. A circular chamber, curtains drawn. The air is warm, scented with crushed violets and ink. And there it stands, the queen's mirror. Taller than a man, framed in silver. The glass utterly flawless. No dust, no smudges. Not even candlelight reflected in it. Weirdly. You approach. Slowly. Bren watches the door. You look. And for a moment, nothing. Just you. Just your pale face. A little too tired. A little too guilty. Then, something behind you moves. You spin. No one's there. You turn back to the mirror. Now there's a second figure. Female. Smiling. Not you. She raises a hand. You do not raise yours. Bren grabs your sleeve. "We need to go. Now." And that's when the door swings open. You both freeze. And glides the queen. She's not in robes, not even slippers. She's barefoot in a linen shift, her hair loose, braided with green ribbons. She doesn't look surprised. "I was wondering when you come," she says softly. You start to bow. She waves it off. No need for that. You've already seen more than most courtiers see in a lifetime. She walks past you, stands before the mirror, smiles. She's beautiful, isn't she? She says. I never looked like that. Not really. But she thinks I did. Your throat dries. Who is she? Bren asks, breath trembling. Who was I? She replies, eyes still on the glass. Before the crowns, the oaths, the silence. She remembers, this isn't a confession. It's a lullaby. She's not mad. Or maybe she is, but in that royal way where madness becomes tradition. You know, she says, the king hasn't spoken my name in over a year. And Lord Halberd, he's just a vessel. The mirror's real. She listens. She keeps my secrets when the world wants them torn out. She turns to you now. Do you want to tell them? The nobles? The king? Her voice is light to light you. Don't answer. Bren does. No. We want the truth. But not if it kills us. She nods. Good answer. But truth always kills something. Even if it's just belief. She steps aside. The mirror clears. Your reflection returns. You're both pale, afraid. Awake in a way you didn't want to be. Go, she says. Tell your story, but tell it carefully. You flee. Back in your quarters, Bren can't speak. You both sit on crates like statues too wired to blink. The queen didn't threaten you. Not exactly. But somehow she made you feel like she could. If she chose to, and now you carry something heavier than any chamber pot. The queen's secret isn't just about a lover, or a passageway, or a brand. In a glove, it's about the line between memory and magic, between truth and survival. And it lives in a mirror that may never show your face the same way again. You wake to knocking, not the polite kind. The kind that says, we're coming in whether you open or not. Your door creaks open before your eyes fully adjust. A shadow blocks the torchlight in the hall, then a voice flat, bored, clip-like. Embroidery scissors, the steward wants a word. Now, no explanation, no time. You dress in 3 motions, nearly put your tunic on backwards, and follow the guard down the winding servant stair, heart pounding like a festival drumbeat. You expect to be taken to the kitchens, or the steward's smoky office. Instead, you're led out into the courtyard, then up, higher, into the library wing, past the chapel, past the queen's chambers, higher still, to the hall of night. No one calls it that officially, but that's what the servants whisper. A narrow chamber of midnight blue stone, so quiet your own breathing feels like heresy. It's not on any map. Not even the architects acknowledge it, but every servant knows it exists, because this is where things get decided. And there they are. 5 nobles, seated like chess pieces, all in dressing gowns. One wears boots with gold stitching. One still clutches a goblet. Another is visibly asleep. At the center, Lady Marth, the king's cousin, the kind of woman who could politely end your entire bloodline over breakfast, and still compliment the marmalade. You know why you're here? She asks before you can speak. You try to lie. You really do. But your mouth's dry and your tongue doesn't bend right. There's been talk. You manage. Lady Marth raises one elegant brow. Oh, my dear, there's always talk. What matters is what you said. Someone's told. Or half told. You glance around the room but none of them meet your eyes. And then, from a side door, Bren is marched in. Hair mussed. Wrist bound with silken rope. He looks at you and something in his face cracks. You're going to die. Or worse, you're going to be made to live with whatever comes next. Marth waves a hand. The other nobles lean back. One yawns. Another picks his teeth. We've heard, she says, that you and your little friend have taken an interest in matters far above your station. Mirrors, gloves, whispers, quite a performance. You start to speak, but she silences you with a single finger. And yet, she murmurs, you haven't taken this tale to the king, or the chancellor. Why? It's not a question. It's a trap. You answer anyway, because the queen didn't threaten us. Not really. And the truth isn't finished yet. That earns a chuckle from the sleepy noble. Marth sips something from a slender glass. Interesting, because if I were in your place, I'd assume the queen did threaten you. Indirectly. Subtly. That's her style. She stands, and she says, pacing, would very much like to hear your version of events. Here? Now. So, we may decide what to do with it. So you tell it. Every last detail. You describe the lattice panel, the mirror, the burn mark, the queen's cryptic words. You even describe the second reflection, the one that winked. The nobles don't interrupt. They don't laugh. When you finish, there's a long, soft silence, like a room waiting to exhale. And then Marth says, Fascinating, thank you. She claps once. Not a courtly clap, a signal. To guards enter. Not to seize you, but to untie Bren. Your story, she says, is not unuseful. Which is, you realize, the closest thing to a compliment anyone in her family has ever given. Then she adds, but let me tell you a story. She strolls to the wall, taps a stone panel. It slides away. Behind it another mirror. This one's cracked. You know, she muses, that centuries ago, our family employed a magician of sorts. Not a wizard, those are for children's tales. A man who understood reflections. How they hold energy. How they store things. She steps aside so you can see. The crack forms a perfect X across the glass. And in its depths, you swear, you glimpse no, not faces, shadows. Historians still argue whether he ever truly existed. She continues, but the mirror remains. And ever since, the women of our line develop a certain fondness for glass. You look at Martha now with new eyes. She is not afraid. She's part of this. Not directly, maybe. But she knows. She believes. She closes the panel. Faces you again. The queen is clever. Dangerous. But she's also useful. You understand. You nod. She smiles faintly. Good. Then you understand that this story never leaves this room. Not as truth. Not as rumor. If it must escape, it must do so as fiction. A bedtime story. She looks to Bren. You may resume your lute playing. Perhaps learn to tune it. Then to you. You'll be transferred to the records room. You'll learn to handle ink and wax and books. Safer work. Less mobile. You understand what's being offered. Survival. At the cost of silence. Or maybe not silence. Just camouflage. You bow. As you leave, you glance back one last time. Martha's returned to her seat, sipping from her glass. Staring at the now hidden mirror with a look that could pass for pity. But only if you squint. That night, you pack. Not much. A satchel. A bit of dried fruit. Bren stops by. He doesn't say much, just, you think she'll come for us. You shake your head. Number. I think. She doesn't need to. Because in a palace like this, truth doesn't die. It gets archived. Filed under something boring. Labeled miscellaneous. So now you spend your days among scrolls. The records room is colder than you expected. Vaulted ceilings, narrow windows, and rows upon rows of dusty ledgers so old they could crumble if you sigh to. Hard near them, it smells of ink, beeswax, mildew, and dry secrets. It's quiet, blessedly so. But silence is never simple here. Each day, you copy royal decrees onto parchment. You mend broken seals. You rank faded names of men long dead and women whose fates were conveniently unrecorded. And here's the thing. You start to see patterns. Names that reappear. Accusations that were never quite formal. Entire lineages that end mysteriously one winter, only to resume the next spring under different surnames. The palace writes over its own history like a palimpsest, layer upon layer, lie upon lie, until the truth is just a ghost stain on the vellum. Still there, if you know how to squint. Bren comes by now and then, less often. He's still got all 10 fingers, which you take as a good sign. He says the queen hasn't looked at him since that night. You believe him. You haven't seen her either. But her mirror haunts you. Not in dreams. That would be too easy. No, it's worse. You start to notice every reflection. In puddles. In polished spoons. In the wax glass of a lantern. You catch flickers. Second versions of yourself that don't quite mimic you fast enough. One day, alone in the archive, you look into the polished brass on a book hinge and see your own eye blink twice. You shut the drawer. Pretend it didn't happen. After all, you've made peace with this, haven't you? This is survival. This is your new purpose. Marth gave you safety. And a different kind of power, the power of curation. Because now you help shape the record. You decide which stories to preserve, and which to nudge gently into forgetfulness. And one afternoon, months later, you're sorting a collection of unsigned correspondences when you find it. A folded note, familiar ink. No seal. It reads, she doesn't speak to the mirror anymore. It speaks to her. No signature. You stare at it for a long time. Then, very quietly, you place it into an envelope, mark it Noble Curiosities Volume 2, and shelve it behind a stack of tax ledgers from 2 reigns ago. And that should be the end. But history's funny like that. Because soon, the king falls ill. Not gravely, just enough to stay abed for weeks. The queen begins to appear more. At court, in the gardens, even the chapel. Her cheeks glow with a new kind of serenity. Her gowns are brighter. Her laugh carries. One afternoon, she nods at you. Across the great hall. Just once. Barely a tilt of her chin, but it lingers in your mind for days. Did she recognize you? Did she remember? Or was it someone else in her reflection that saw you? That's the thing no one teaches you about secrets. They don't die. They live. They molt. They take new forms. Like the mirror. Like you. Historians still argue whether the Queen's private life had anything to do with the sudden reorganization of her council or the quiet exile of Lord Halbert a year later. There are no surviving letters. No confirmed accusations. Only rumors. Only the bedtime stories told in quiet rooms by servants who definitely never saw anything. And maybe, sometimes in the flicker of candlelight, you tell one of those stories yourself. To a scribe's apprentice, or a curious footman. Just enough to make their eyes widen. Just enough to remind yourself it really happened. But not so much that the mirror takes notice. Because you know it's still there. Waiting. Watching. Just behind the glass. And now, with the candle almost gone and your eyes heavier than guilt in a confessional, you lean back in your cot. The story lingers, doesn't it? Like the smell of old parchment and rose oil, like the memory of a voice that spoke too softly, and a secret that curled itself into the very walls. You're safe now, for the moment. There's no tribunal tonight, no echoing footsteps behind you, no mirrors that seem to breathe. There's just you, and the quiet, the palace stone and shadow, and silk shrinks away behind your eyelids. The nobles return to their chairs. The Queen recedes into her wing. Even the mirror fades, becoming just another smooth surface catching dust and time. Inhale slowly. Hold. Let it out. Feel your spine melt into whatever soft thing holds you right now. Whether it's a bed, a blanket, or just your own weight wrapped. In the calm of sleep. The flicker of torches dims. The hush deepens. The whispers still, curling themselves into silence. And if a final image slips through your mind as you drift off, perhaps it's a locked door with no key. Or a silver frame hanging quietly on a dark stone wall. Let it fade too. There's no need to remember everything. Not tonight. Let the record close itself for now. You did well. Sleep comes for you gently, without mirrors, without secrets, without fear. You're safe, you're safe, you're safe.